Coming to you live from the Mile High City, Denver, Colorado. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on which time zone you happen to be in. We're coming to you live on the I 95 Sports and Entertainment Network, as well as podcasting on most of your major podcast platforms, such as Apple Podcasts or Google or even iHeartRadio. Yes, we are. Thank you very much for listening. And we're also on milehighradio.com and Blackjack TV as well. So, anyway, thanks for listening. It's Monday, the start of another week. If you haven't had enough football, you got one more game coming up tonight. You got the Jaguars against the Saints, and how well positioned. Isn't it just amazing how whenever the NFL is trying to showcase somebody, they kind of take that game and just have it as the only game that you could watch that particular day or that particular night, instead of packaging it in with a whole bunch of games on Saturday or two or three games on Sunday. They wait until Monday night because they want to make sure that you get a look at that quarterback for the Jaguars. They want to make sure that you get a very good look at him. So that's kind of their way of showing you how to set up situations. They are pros at it. They're just absolutely phenomenal. Regardless of what you may think of them, you still have to look at them and say, you know what? They're doing one heck of a job. They're a real smart bunch of guys up there and gals that are actually running the show. So my kudos to them. They know what they're doing. I know every now and then we have something to gripe about that they've done wrong, that we think they've done wrong. But, generally on the whole, they do a pretty decent job. Anyway, that's enough fanfare for the NFL. I'm going to let you know what we're talking about today. Of course, baseball is still the king, although not much longer. It's slowly winnowing down. It's not going to be as popular. We're not going to talk about it as much once the college football season starts next week and once the NFL season starts in the beginning of September. We're going to be kind of staying away more and more. Yeah, we'll come up with some games for you to bet on, but of course, the focus of attention will definitely be turned towards college and professional football. But so we'll be talking about some college football. The other day, we talked about some teams that you should kind of stay away from, maybe not think about betting on. Well, today we're going to look at some other teams that are kind of look like they might want to give you a shot. So, kind of bring these teams to your attention. That's all we're trying to do. Bring the teams to your attention. You take a closer look at it, and perhaps maybe you may agree, or maybe you'll disagree with our summation of what we're talking about that particular team. So, anyway, we also want to talk about a couple of baseball games that we are going to take a closer look at and kind of give you an idea as to what the line movement is, as well as looking in which direction the pros are going. That's going to be Kansas City against Houston and Seattle against the Oakland A's. But in the meantime, as always, the first thing we do on the show is talk about things that happened yesterday. So let's get started first with Major League Baseball. The favorites, as usual, 7-6 yesterday, but there were some huge upsets yesterday. The Tigers at a plus 230. We were talking about the Tigers throughout the season. They have been a very good team to bet on as a dog. They have a great dog record. Yesterday, Blue Jays plus 230 on the money line. Miguel Cabrera hit his 500th home run, so he's kind of cemented his place in baseball history. So they covered real easily plus 230 on the money line. And of course, the Mariners were a plus 175 up against the Astros. The Orioles lost their 18th straight game. So if you've been going on the losing winning streaks, if you've been staying with them, you've been really if you've been staying with them as losing each game, you did very, very well. But if somewhere in there you started betting that they're going to finally win a game, you're still sucking high wind, as they say. The favorites so far are at 59.5% for the entire season. The over and under split yesterday, 6-6. The overs still have a slight lead at 50.3%. Meanwhile, over in the NFL, the 49ers, a 6.5 point favorite, beat the Chargers 15-10. but once again, they didn't cover because they were 6.5 point road favorites. The Browns, being a 6 point favorite, beat the Giants 17-13, but they didn't cover also as a home team chalk. Now, both of these games stayed on the under. The favorites are 10-4 straight up so far this week. You had a pick 'em thrown in there, but the dogs lead 9-5 against the spread. The favorites lead 20-11 straight up, okay, overall, but the dogs lead against the spread, which is really what we're most interested in. 16-14, and the road teams are 11-4 straight up and 12-3 against the spread. 12-3 for the road teams against the spread this week. And of course, their lead is 19-12 straight up, 20-10 against the spread, which kind of puts them at over 66% so far this season. The unders still lead 10-5 this week, and all together since the beginning of the preseason, including the Hall of Fame game, 24-8, 75% win percentage on the unders in NFL preseason games so far this season. So there was a trend we talked about as it started to break out. Hopefully, some of you guys got involved in it, did very, very well. But again, we've been kind of cautioning you, be very careful, be a little more selective as to where you go with this because, some teams are going to go over that number and more of them probably will because they're starting to play more of their regular players into the games. So again, look at them real close. Underdogs have been doing very, very well. Also, the unders have been doing very, very well. But again, as most trends, they eventually all come to an end at some point in time. So that's the story with the NFL yesterday. We do have an NFL game that we're going to talk about today. That's between the Jaguars and the Saints. And of course, like we said, two baseball games as well as far as the line movement is concerned. So that's the story for today. We're going to do a lot of talking today. So college football, we're going to talk about some teams that you can take a look at. Just take a look at it. We want to bring it to your attention. Whether you go with it or not, that's totally up to you. But at least we want to put the spotlight on it for a minute or two and give you the opportunity to make your own mind up as to what you think that situation should be. So anyway, once again, as usual, we take our first break around this time. We do take 3 breaks within the show. Each one is of a 1-minute duration. So just keeping that in mind, we will be back into the sports wagering zone in 1 minute. And here we go again. Welcome back. You're back in the sports wagering zone. You're in the zone. I'm Chris Pardo coming to you live from Mile High City, Denver, Colorado, right here on the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network. We're also podcasting on most of your major podcast platforms, such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, you name it, we're in most places as well. So we This is a new week. The week is just beginning. It's Monday. We got 7 major league games to choose from today. There's an NFL preseason game we're going to take a look at as well. So, like I said, if you haven't had enough football, you got one more game on tap for today. So, let's go to that football game first, and then we'll cover the 2 baseball games as well. So, at 8 o'clock tonight, Eastern Time, of course, whenever we give our times, we're talking Eastern Time. The Jacksonville Jaguars, New Orleans Saints. This is a Monday night game, and it's the final game of the preseason as far as week 2 is concerned. We still have one more week to go. The Jaguars are 0-1 straight up. They're 0-1 against the spread. They lost to the Browns 23-13 in their first game. They lost, and they were straight up as a 3-point home favorite in that game, and they wound up losing. Similarly, the Saints are 0-1 straight up, 0-1 against the spread, as they lost to the Ravens 17-14, and they didn't cover as a 1-point road dog in that game. So, looking at the line in this game, it opened with New Orleans, a 3.5-point home favorite. The professionals and the general public are both laying the points, and they drove the Saints number up from 3.5 to 4. Some of the shops even went up as high as 4.5, as we've seen. But then some Jaguar money came in, a little buyback money brought the line back down to 4. Now the total opened at 37.5 and has been steamed up to 40. So if you're betting the over now, you're late to the party, okay? And getting the worst of the number is what's going to happen as well, which is commonly we talk about as chasing the steam, okay? In other words, once the steam gets started, if you haven't been in on it up at that point, kind of just forget about it, because you keep chasing it, keeps going higher and higher and higher. Now, instead, you could be eyeing a buy low inflated under possibility in this game. The under is 24-8 so far this season, which is 75%. And when the total is 37 or higher, the under is 10-2 this preseason, and also up there, up around 62%, going all the way back to 2014. Now, Jameis Winston, he's a minus 190 favorite to take the first snap in week 1 for the Saints. Taysom Hill is a plus 140 to do it. So that's the story. The numbers are climbing. It's up to 4.5. Could even go to 5. Just be careful. Don't chase the steam, as we say. Of course, you can bet the under if you'd like. But again, this is one of those situations, even though the unders have been doing very, very well, this is one of those games where you're liable to see a high-scoring game. It's already been steamed up from 37 up to 40. So you can imagine they're expecting some big time plays in this particular game. Now, that's the story with the NFL. Once again, the pros and the general public, everybody, they're all on the Saints. Of course, they drove the number up from 3.5 to 4. I've seen it at 4.5 at some of the houses. And then some of the buyback money on the Jaguars came in, and it kind of brought the number back down again. So kind of keep an eye on this one. This one you have to be kind of cautious on. I would kind of think that it's probably going to go over, okay? But I don't know if it's going to go over that number they're talking about. It'll definitely, I think, go over 37.5. No doubt about that. But I think 40 goes up to 41 or 42, you're really chasing a lot of points. So that's the story there. So let's get to baseball. We have 2 games on tap for tonight. At 8 o'clock, you got the Kansas City Royals, 55-68, playing the Houston Astros at 73-51. Now, both these teams are non-divisional teams. They've played well lately. Kansas City is well out of the playoff contention, but they've won 6 games and lost only 1 in their last 7 games. They recently swept the Cubs in Chicago, but again, I always fall back and say who hasn't so far this season. Meanwhile, Houston leads the American League West by 3.5 games over Oakland, okay, in second place, and they just took 2 of 3 from Seattle while they're at home. So in tonight's first game, the Royals come in with their lefty, David Lynch. He's 3-3 with a 5.12 ERA. And the Astros come in with their right-hander, Zach Greinke. That's their ace. He's 11-3 with a 3.43 ERA. Now, as we look at the line on this game, it opened with Houston, a minus 220 home favorite. Really started out high. Kansas City, a plus 200 road underdog. Now, the pros aren't scared off by that big chalk, and what they've done is they've steamed Houston up from minus 220 up to minus 240 on the money line. Now, keep one thing in mind, non division, and they're home favorites. If you're a home favorite in a non divisional game, they're at 62% so far this season. Now, home favorites who are at a minus 200 or more are at 73%. So even though if you're looking at this game and you kind of like Houston in this game, 240 as the money line on the negative side. But with those kind of numbers and seeing that it's, you got a one chance in 4 of losing this game, of course, that's enough for you to lose. You might want to think about maybe betting the game or not. But we bring this to your attention. It's up to you as to whether or not you want to bet the game. It's at 73% so far this season. The Astros are 60-38 when they're as a favorite. The Royals, when they're an underdog, are 34-51. Now, Houston is 28-21. They're very good against lefties. Kansas City is 35-50 when they're up against right-handed pitching. Houston is 39-24 at home. Kansas City, well, they're 23-37 on the road. Now, the Astros are going to, of course, come in with their big bats in this one. Houston's hitting at 268, which makes them the top team in Major League Baseball. That's the top hitting team in the league. Kansas City is hitting at 244. They're like 12th on the list. There looks to be a slight lean to the under in this game. The total is 9, but they've juiced the under up to minus 115. So if that juice goes up even a little higher, you're probably going to see that total drop down to 8.5. So Kansas City against Houston. Again, if you like Houston in this game, be prepared to lay some heavy wood. But on the plus side, the heavy wood of that number has been coming in at least 73% of the time so far this season. That's 3 out of 4 chances that you have of winning this game. So that's the story with that game. We have one more game, Seattle against Oakland. But let's take a break right now. Got to take a quick sip of water, get right back into business. And when we come back, that's the game we're going to talk about and kind of let you know how this little method or system that we've been dealing with is doing, how it did yesterday, and how it's done so far this season. So let's get that break out of the way. And as usual, we'll be back into the zone in 1 minute. And here we go. Welcome back. You're back in the sports wagering zone. I'm Chris Pardo. Thank you for listening wherever you are, whatever time zone you happen to be in. Good morning, good afternoon, or again, depending on what time of the day you're listening to the show as well, if you're listening to one of the podcasts as well. So we're here on the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network. We're here every day, Monday through Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Saturdays and Sundays, we're here at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. So, just to repeat some of the stuff we talked about, if you happen to tune in late and you missed it, we talked about the NFL game on tap for tonight, the Jacksonville Jaguars and the New Orleans Saints. In this game, the pros and the general public, everyone is on the New Orleans Saints in this game to cover. And of course, they're also looking at the over on this game. Of course, they've really spiked that number up to 40. But anyway, that's the story. It's up to you. You decide which way you want to go. We also talked about baseball and Kansas City Royals against the Houston Astros. Once again, the pros and the general public, they love the Astros in this game. And of course, you're with Greinke going today for Houston with the great record, great season he's had. They bumped up the numbers up to about minus 220, 240 now, and may even go even higher. So if you do like Houston, be prepared to lay a lot of wood in this game as well. So that's it. Houston over Kansas City, the New Orleans Saints over the Jaguars, general public, and the pros are both on those two teams. Meanwhile, at 9 o'clock, 9:40, 9:30, somewhere in that area, the Seattle Mariners are 67 and 58, playing in Oakland at 70 and 55. Now, this is probably a very crucial series for both of these teams, both the Mariners and the A's. The A's are tied right now with the Red Sox for that second wild card spot, but the Mariners are only 3 games behind them. Now, both teams are looking to get back on track again. The Mariners, well, they just dropped 2 games to Houston out of a 3-game series, while the A's just dropped a 2 out of 3 home series, of course, to the San Francisco Giants. Now, in tonight's first game, Seattle comes in with their left-hander, Marco Gonzalez. He's 5-5. He's got a 4.10 ERA. And Oakland comes back with their right-hander, Paul Blackburn, who's also 0-1 with a 5.06 ERA. Now, as we look at the line in this game, it opened with the A's listed as a short minus 107, 107 home favorite. The Mariners opened as a minus 103 road dog. They're both in the minus column. The pros have pounced on the A's, okay, steaming Oakland up from minus 107 up to minus 120 on the money line, okay? So from a virtual pick-em price, they jumped them up to minus 120 on the money line. Now, keep in mind that home favorites, when they move 10 cents or more of steam, are at 62% so far this season. Now, short home favorites, that's favorites that are minus 130 or less. Of course, right now, Oakland's at minus 120, are 58% so far this season. And if you would have been betting just short home favorites all season long, you would have been up ahead by 31 units. Again, for the newcomers, 31 units or units, we're kind of talking about because we don't know what everybody's betting. So the only way we can kind of analyze it is to say it's the number of units. So whether you're betting $10 a game or $100 a game or $1,000 a game, just multiply that by 31. That's how much you'd be far ahead so far. So Oakland has mashed lefties this season. Not a problem. 28 and 18, beating up on left-handed pitchers. We could also be looking at a higher scoring game in this one. The total opened at 8.5, but then the over has been juiced up to minus 115. Now, just like in the other game we talked about, if the juice happens to go to, say, 120, you might see the number go up to 9 in this game as well. So if you're interested in the total, if you want to get in on it, 8.5 is what we've seen so far. Some places it's 9. Again, check with your local situation. We are talking with Las Vegas numbers. Now, the forecast, the weather, low 60s, and there's going to be a 10-mile-per-hour wind blowing out to center field, which means more home runs usually. That's why it's juiced up to 115, and a good possibility it's going to go to 9 before game time. So in this particular game, Seattle against Oakland. The pros like Oakland in this game, and last we've seen is somewhere around minus 120 on the money line. So once again, just to recap the three teams and games we talked about, the Saints over the Jacksonville Jaguars. Not only the pros, but the general public are on it, and of course they're on the over in that game. They're expecting a very high scoring game in that situation. Kansas City against Houston. Pros and the general public around the Houston Astros. If you like Houston, get ready to lay a lot of wood. Last we've seen, minus 240 on the money line. Seattle against Oakland in this particular game. The pros got on to the Oakland Athletics, steamed it up from minus 107 up to 120. They are the choice of the professional bettors as well. So that's the story on those three games. Again, let's just take a quick look at this little method system, whatever you want to call it. Some people call it a system, some people call it a method, whichever way you want to look at it. It's following in which direction the line movement goes, and also by watching and seeing where the pros are betting. We always let you know as the teams that the pros are betting on, and we're kind of following them all season long. Now, so far during the month of August, they're at 61%. Yesterday, we had three plays. They had the Jays over the Tigers, and that was a losing situation. You had Milwaukee over Washington, which was a win, and they had Cleveland over the Angels, which was a win. So he had three plays yesterday, two winners, one loser. The day before that, we had three plays, two winners, one loser. And the day before that, we had, of course, that bad day where there were three losers on that particular day. But in spite of all that, just to kind of I want to show you the trend of which direction it's kind of going so you can make a better judgment as to whether you want to be with them or be against them. You can go either way, of course. So far this month, they're at 61%. You would have had 59 plays so far. You would have had 36 winners if you followed them. So over the season, since the beginning of the season, we're at 54%. Over 54%, very slightly. So that's the story as far as baseball is concerned about the football game on for tonight. So let's take our final break. And when we get done, we're going to take a look at a couple of college football teams and kind of give you some insights into some of them because we kind of think that maybe they're going to do better than expected. So we'll tell you about it. You think about it. The only idea, again, is just to bring it to your attention, focus your attention on it so that this way, if you're interested, you might want to take a closer look at it. So we'll be back into the zone after this final break. And of course, as usual, it's just going to be 1 minute. And welcome back. Welcome back. You're back again into the sports wagering zone where we're going to be talking about college football. Okay. We're going to talk about a couple of teams that maybe you should take a closer look at. Okay. Just again, want to bring these four teams to your attention. You take a closer look because we kind of think that they're going to exceed their win totals that they're projected at right now. Now, to start off with, whether you'll like them or not, and they're 50-50 on that, maybe 60-40 against not liking them. Lane Kiffin has really become a really sharp college coach. His Mississippi offense looks really explosive again this year. You got Matt Corral coming back as probably the top quarterback in the SEC, and 9 starters coming back on defense as well. Now, the Rebels, let's go with that call, of course, should open with wins over Louisville. They should beat Austin P, Tulane. So this way they should be like 3-0 before that October 2nd game against Alabama, which is where he has kind of helped along as well. So you have Alabama on October 2nd. So at that point, they should be about 3-0. More than likely, they may not be 4-0 after that game, but that's just another story. The Ole Miss Alabama game was tied at 42 in the fourth quarter last year. Remember that? And that was proof that they can hang with any team in the conference. So who knows? They may be 4-0 after that Alabama game. They did very well against them last year. Now, the rest of the schedule kind of breaks pretty good in their direction as well. They get to play Arkansas, LSU, then they play Liberty, Texas A&M, and then Vanderbilt at home, and also they play Tennessee, Auburn, and Mississippi State while they're on the road. Now, it's very reasonable to project 9 wins for the Rebels, but 8-4 appears to be a really good bet. So the over on Mississippi is 7.5, and it's minus 120 on the money line at BetMGM. So we're looking at Mississippi, Ole Miss, the Rebels, as going over that 7.5 game total. Meanwhile, Nevada at 7.5. We kind of like them as an over as well, and they're at minus 125 on the money line. Now, it shouldn't come as a surprise if the Wolfpack win the Mountain West. 10 starters are coming back on offense, 10 starters coming back on defense, and Carson Strong is the best quarterback in that Mountain West Conference. Now, Strong completed 70% of his passes, had 27 touchdowns with only 4 interceptions last year. Nevada finished at 7-2. Now, Strong is working with 3 elite playmakers. He has running back Toa Tua and wide receivers Romeo Dubs and Elijah Cooks. So he's set up to really put up some really big numbers this season. Now, Strong might not be Josh Allen, who started in this league at Wyoming, but he's definitely going to be an NFL prospect. There's no doubt about that. The schedule is tough, no doubt about it, especially on the road. They're up against California, Kansas State, Boise State, up against Fresno State, San Diego State, and Colorado State. But the Wolfpack are they're really capable of winning a few of these road games, and they should go 6-0 at home. So they'll be howling in Reno because this team is really loaded. So we're looking at over 7.5 on Nevada at minus 125 at the money line at BetMGM. Also, looking at Purdue at over 5, and they're at minus 130 right now on the money line. Now, this is a buy low price on Jeff Brom. He heads into his 5th year knowing For sure, the honeymoon is over. The Boilermakers' blowout victory over number 2 Ohio State in 2018, that's way back in the past. His record is 8-16 since then. His last two teams, many injuries. So now he's starting to feel the heat. He made some important changes in his defensive coaching staff to try to help it along. Purdue comes back with 9 starters on offense and defense, with their defensive end, George Karlaftis, and wide receiver David Bell ranking among the Big Ten's best players so far. Now, Brome is an aggressive offensive coach, and sophomore quarterback Jack Plummer, who's related to Jake Plummer, if you remember him, has the experience and the talent to really trigger a high scoring attack. The Boilermakers are expected to be favored in 4 of their first 5 games against Oregon State, UConn, Illinois, and Minnesota. So this play should be a push, even at worst. At 6-6 is realistic. So Purdue over 5 minus 130 on the money line. And finally, we talked about this one the other day. Utah over 8.5, that minus 145 on the money line. Now, Kyle Whittingham, he's the most reliable coach in the Pac 12. His team really reflects his blue collar image, which he portrays. The Utes return all their starters on the offensive line. They have a deep, experienced defensive line as well. 10 starters coming back on defense at Utah. Now, the team's most important starter could be a newcomer. Baylor graduate transfer quarterback Charlie Brewer. He can lift the offense to that next level after some bad play that doomed Utah early in the season last year. Utah could be favored in 11 of their games, with the only obvious underdog spot on October 9th when they play USC. Okay? The Utes catch a scheduling break. They're getting home games against Arizona State, Oregon, and UCLA. And remember, Whittingham is a bet on coach, and he has the league's top offensive and defensive lines. So Utah, really, they have the potential to win 9 or even 10 games if Brewer delivers as most people think he will. So look at Utah over 8.5. If you're looking at it now, it's at minus 145 on the money line. So once again, Utah over 8.5. Purdue over 5, Nevada over 7.5, and of course, Mississippi over 7.5 as well. So, again, just bringing these games to your attention. Kind of take a look at them, kind of get an idea, take a close look yourself, use your own analysis, try to take into consideration some of the things we've talked about. And you may say, hey, oh, I didn't know that. I didn't realize this, or wow, or whatever it is, something that may trigger you to look a little closer. And hey, this way, if it does work out that way, it's going to do well for you as well. So that's the story there over on those teams we just talked about in college football. And so we get back again, once again, to today and what we talked about as far as the NFL game for tonight. The pros and the general public, everybody on the Saints against the Jaguars, expecting a huge scoring game, well over into the 40s as well in this game. On the other hand, as far as baseball is concerned, 2 games on tap. Kansas City against Houston. The pros and the general public are on Houston. But like I said earlier, be prepared to lay some heavy wood if you like Houston in this game. Seattle against the A's. The pros like the A's in this game, as well as the general public. And of course, the juice may be not as bad. You're in about the 130 range, but that may not be as bad as going up into the 230s and 240s as the game in Houston is going to be. So anyway, that's the story as far as the games for today are concerned. Like I said, one more NFL preseason game on tap, and then we get ready to get into week 3 of the NFL preseason, and then we're going to get into college football. And before you know it, the NFL season will be opening on September the 9th. So once again, thanks very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you have any comments, hey, by all means, we do want to hear from you. Good, bad, indifferent. We want to know what we're doing. Send us an email. Send it to the Sports Wagering Zone at gmail.com. That's the Sports Wagering Zone at gmail.com. Looking forward to hearing from you. Any comments you have, we'll see what we can do. So have a beautiful Monday. It's the beginning of the week, the start of the new betting week. If you're going to be doing any betting today, I certainly hope you have a profitable day as well as to having a good day as well. So until tomorrow, once again at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network, I'm Chris Pardo. Thank you very much for listening. We'll be back again tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Have a great day. Have a profitable day. Talk to you tomorrow. Goodbye, everybody.